If you go to the gym regularly, eat pretty healthy, drink enough water, and still feel like you're stuck in the same body, this video is for you. Because most women don't fail fat loss because they lack habits. They fail because no one ever gave them a strategy. And once I finally understood that difference, I lost 13 kilos without burning out. Now, what do I mean by this distinction between habits and strategy? Because habits are great. Do not misunderstand me. I love habits. Did a whole video on habits and what habits that I do all the time. But habits usually are inputs, like going to the gym, eating healthy, drinking water, sleeping well, and all of that stuff. But the strategy is the system that makes inputs produce results. Because if you just do random habits and you don't really know what you want to achieve with that, you just kind of like trying to do something, it's never gonna get to the point that you actually want because everything is way too unstructured. It's the same thing as if you would sit in your car and start driving without a GPS. It would take so much effort to get to where you wanted, and there is no guaranteed outcome that you're gonna get to where you actually want to get. But strategy is knowing where, how, and why you're doing something. Because like I said, habits are great, but habits only decide how much effort you put in. Strategy decides whether that effort actually goes somewhere. Now, this is the reason why good habits sometimes just are not enough for fat loss. For example, going to the gym and just kind of doing something and going there just to tick it off your list is completely different than going to the gym with the goal of wanting to lose weight. Of course, if you're in the beginning, just getting into the habit of going is great. It's a great start. But if you have bigger goals, you do have to know what you're doing. You have to go in with a plan. And same thing with eating healthy. Great. But eating healthy does not mean that you're going to lose weight. You would have to eat for your goal, for what you actually want to achieve with that. It's kind of like putting in random effort and trying to see what sticks versus intentionally designing what works for you. Because like going back to the example of the gym, if you do the same workouts every single week without progressing, without adding more weight, without trying to get better at them, you're not going to see actual progression. You're not going to see muscle retention, you're not going to see muscle growth. And when you lose weight, that's the things that you want to get out of your workout. Either muscle retention, because that's really important while losing weight, because muscle is the first thing to go if you're not careful. But also, if you want to build a little bit of muscle, you have to know what you're doing in the gym. And the same thing with healthy eating. You can eat as healthy as you want, but if you're over your calories, you're not in a deficit, and that means you're not going to lose weight. If losing weight is your goal, there has to be some kind of calorie awareness, or at least portion awareness that you know you're eating less than what you're burning. Otherwise, just mathematically, weight loss cannot happen. And honestly, the worst thing about this is that you're putting in the effort. You're doing the habits. You think you're gonna get somewhere. But then if you put that much effort and energy into things that maybe do not even get you to where you want to go, and if you would have put the same amount of effort in strategy and things that actually bring you there, you would have already seen results. And of course, people get unmotivated if they don't see results when they just don't know what they're doing. It's not going to be sustainable this way, because at some point you do want to know that what you're doing is actually bringing you closer to your goals. Because usually you do not have to try harder. You just need more clarity that what you're doing is working. And honestly, this is exactly where most people get stuck. They try to build habits without ever being shown the strategy behind them. This is actually also why I made a free guide called the Fat Loss Recovery Kit, and it helps you zoom out and understand why things haven't been working and kind of rebuild your approach in a sustainable way that brings you results, especially if you've been stuck in this cycle for years. So if you just want something that's going to walk you through step by step, I'll just link it in the description box. Now let's get into what strategy actually looks like during fat loss. I will break this down into 3 different layers. The first one is training strategy. And you might be one of those people going to the gym 5-6 days a week and still not really seeing any results that you would want to. So honestly, if you're going to the gym that much and not really seeing results, I would suggest fewer workouts but done well and intentionally. That's so much better than just many workouts done randomly. You need to know what your goal is during the workout. I mean, I only go to the gym twice a week and I've lost 13 kilos with that. So it's not about how often you go to the gym, it's how specific and clear you are about what you're doing while you're there. The other important thing is progressive overload. I touched on this before already, but progressive overload basically means that you can't stay at the same weights all the time. You can't go in and do the same weights week after week after week. Your body needs the information that the muscles are still needed, that they still need to grow. That means you either progressively overload by adding more weight, but you can actually also do it with slowing down the exercise before you can add new weight. But I think the most reliable way to measure this is always adding more weight as you go on. And then another thing is training more so for fat loss and not just for movement, if that's your goal. For me, for example, my main priority during fat loss is muscle retention, which means that I'm going to primarily focus on strength training. I almost do no cardio. I basically do not do any cardio. I know health-wise, that's a different kind of story. I should do more. But for weight loss, if I'm being completely honest, cardio is not needed. I don't like doing cardio as much during a weight loss phase because less with walking, but like running, going on a bike, and just intense cardio, it makes you more hungry. It's gonna make everything harder. And I really do not want that for this phase. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for me, honestly. Now, the second layer is nutrition strategy. What I've been doing here is calorie awareness, but without obsession. And that's easier said than done, honestly. I've gotten to this point because I've done intuitive eating for almost 2 years, and I've worked through my whole binge eating disorder that I had, because before all that I was just going between eating way too little to like then going the opposite direction and eating way too much, and just always jumping between the two and feeling horrible about it, honestly. So everything I did just didn't stick long term because I always still had things that I had to figure out, like knowing that there isn't good and bad foods, that everything is included in a healthy diet. You can have everything, you can enjoy everything in moderation, and that's part of life. Basically, just being aware of calories. I personally count calories just because it makes it easier for me. I know not everyone can do that. I couldn't have done it a few years ago either because it would have gotten a bit too obsessive. But honestly, right now, it's the right thing for me because I'm not getting obsessed with it. And it's just one tool with many other things that I do, like listening to my hunger and satiety and including all the foods in my diet and looking at maybe protein, eating enough protein because that's also really important for me for the muscle growth and also for satiety, honestly. And then adding on to that, just generally meals that stabilize your hunger, because that's just one of the most important things during a fat loss phase, that you do not want to get too hungry. And now the third layer is the lifestyle strategy. Here I'm focusing on getting enough sleep, reducing stress as much as possible, which isn't always possible if I'm being completely honest, but as much as you can, low stress, because that really impacts if you can lose weight too. And then especially planning for low energy days, like what are you going to do when you don't want to go to the gym? What are you going to do when you're on your period and you're feeling low energy? Like plan for those things. If you're okay with going to the gym and just doing a bit less, doing less weights, not going to the gym for as long, like maybe instead of 60-minute workouts, you're going to do like 30-minute workouts on your period, and just figuring out what works for you, or doing a yoga workout. Like it just needs to work when you don't have the energy to think about what you want to do, because if you have an option that doesn't seem as daunting, it's more likely that you're going to go with that one instead of doing the full thing that you would usually do. So you'd rather choose that instead of just not doing anything, because your strategy should really answer how much, how often, and why, so you don't have to guess every single day if you're doing it right. Because like I said, habits are necessary, but sometimes they're just not sufficient to get you to where you want to go. Because strategy does not mean perfection. It doesn't mean that you need to do everything exactly how you planned it, but it means that you need to have clarity with what your day-to-day is going to look like, and how and why you're doing those things. What are they going to bring you? What are you going to get from that? Is it actually going to work? You don't need extreme goals. You just need aligned systems that work for you. So if this helped you understand why habits alone haven't worked for you, the next piece is understanding how fat loss actually works without extremes. And I actually made a video breaking down calorie deficits, metabolism, and why counting calories alone keeps most people stuck. So I'll just link it on the screen here. I hope this helped, and I hope that I see you in my next video. Bye!